If you like what you're seeing and hearing, please consider subscribing to the podcast. You can go to either Apple iTunes, the Google Play Store, Spotify, or Amazon Music in the podcast section. It'll hit Monday morning or Sunday afternoon, depending on when it posts. And the video will hit on YouTube and Spotify Monday. Spotify will hit Monday evening, and YouTube it'll hit Monday morning, 7 a.m., just like it does for the audio services. So please go to those places and consider subscribing or listening to the show. You can also write to me at gwgpodfellows@gmail.com if you want to write me a letter. Let me know what you think of the show, things like that. Or you can also find me on Twitter at JustLittleJoe. So go to those places and please consider liking and subscribing. Thanks. And with that, we'll get on to the episode. Avin, how you doing?
Shabby moment.
Yeah, Avin, how you doing? This is episode 251 of Gaming with Grief. I've said it many times, but it seems like every time we do this, it's a depressing thing. I didn't want to have to make the call, as they say. I didn't want to have to make the call and talk about more depressing stuff. And I waited because this stuff seems to just pile up, this news. If anybody isn't familiar, on February 28th, it was announced that EA was laying off 670 workers. They're sunsetting games, and they're moving away from licensed IP. They canceled a Star Wars game that was being worked on at Respawn. Respawn worked on the newest Jedi Survivor games. That is done. The teams are being moved around. A lot of people don't talk about licensing in games, but it does happen. I'm sure EA had some accountants go over like, yes, these games sold millions of copies, but the amount of money we have to pay to Disney is not worth it. We're not. And if we own the IP like Battlefront or something like that, we get all the money. So I will say
that's exactly how it works.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of people are like, but it sold so much. We talked, I think, a couple episodes ago, or maybe that's part of this. Like Sony announced layoffs as well. They announced they're laying off 900 people, and it's big studios.
They closed their studio
They closed their
London?
London studio, which was more of a VR studio, which really says a lot about their new VR headset that came out with February of last year. They're like, we're not even developing for it. The studio closed. I heard some scuttlebutt behind the scenes on the podcast and things I listened to that like there was some rumblings of which studio was going to be closed. London studio closed. It's insane. It's to me, and the thing with Sony is, they were, like I said, they were big studios. Insomniac has a lot of people have said are holding PlayStation on their back. They've already released, I want to say, 3 games for the PS5 generation, and they have one more coming. Some of them are licensed though. And so I think maybe that's with the budget ballooning of these licensed games. You and I talked about the Insomniac leaks. I guess it's just the amount of money they're spending to get these games done, and they're taking long and long to make. And if you have to pay a license fee, they're like, this is not worth it anymore. Sean Layton, who was the president of Sony, just gave a talk somewhere. I don't have the article because it just broke like a day ago. But he basically said, exclusives to your console are a bit, I'm paraphrasing, a bit of an albatross. Like it gets people to come in to your whatever, but like you have to pay for all that, so it's hard. There's been a lot of talk about Microsoft going multi-platform. Some of it was blown out of out of scope. Everybody thought they were going to end the console business, turn everything over to third parties. They're just doing it with a few titles for now. So, again, Rooster Teeth. I talked about this on the phone with you yesterday. Not a lot of people are familiar with Rooster Teeth. I just know them from Red versus Blue back in the day. They were around for 21 years. They also came out with Ruby, and there was a show called Genlock that they did, an animated show.
Michael B. Jordan in it.
Yeah, and I heard nothing but good things. And like I told you on the phone, with Rooster Teeth closing, it is sad when anybody loses their jobs. There's live streams of the people that had been there for a long time talking about what it was like to work there and immiserating and, tearing up because they'd been there for so long. But like I told you over the phone, to me, I look at it as kind of amazing in a media landscape that any business can be around for 21 years, let alone one based on the internet. Where when I watched Red versus Blue back in the day, it wasn't YouTube. It was like maybe it was, but I just saw it in weird websites. that you did
YouTube, I
not.
think, opened in 2006 or seven.
Yeah. So, you know, they had at one time over 400 employees from what I heard, and they said right now their layoffs will result in 150 full-time employees and dozens of contractors being uh, let go,
Yeah,
basically.
so it was like 156 or 157, dozens of contractors. I guess at their peak, which was only just a few years ago, like you said, it was around 500.
Yeah.
So they've been dwindling. They've been working hard to become profitable, but
Hmm.
apparently one of the things that was brought up is they haven't been profitable in over a decade.
I've heard conflicting
Um,
reports about that because I heard some.
they've been purchased and purchased and purchased and purchased. It sounds like too. Like a bunch of companies have just been trading hands with Rooster Teeth
Right.
for
Well,
a long time.
I think that would, from what I heard, there was actually I saw some people go online that had worked for them and said, I haven't worked over them in a couple of years, but when I worked for them, they were profitable for themselves, you know. But if you're a company like Warner Brothers looking at their, at their accounting books, it's like you're profitable, but like you know what I mean? It's not enough. They even said the fandom, in Warner Brothers official statement, um, it said, I'm trying to see the official. They basically said that the official statement was something like the fan base was, like the fandom was not profitable, meaning they couldn't, out of what was available for fans, they couldn't bring a profit, and so that's why they decided to sell, the company, or
And
Rooster
it's
Teeth.
kind of surprising to me when they brought up that it wasn't profitable because they were doing on a pay per view or a subscriber basis,
Hmm.
and at their peak they were well over six figures in fans. I want to say it was over 100,000, but
Yeah,
when they closed their doors, they were down to 60.
yeah,
Do you
it's
think 60,000 monthly subscribers would be enough money to keep a smaller company like that? 150, 160 employees, but apparently not.
I mean, again, my heart goes out to everybody that, getting the call when everybody's working on programming and trying to do the best job. And, they got all these projects going and you get the call like, hey, it's all over with, turn the lights off. That's terrible. But I do want to hats off to Rooster Teeth because back in the day, I was like, oh, you can do funny things with video games online. You could make like it was just different. And, 21 years I think is pretty great. I mean, the other thing I want to talk about, um, is Hogwarts Legacy and Warner Brothers. It seems like, I think that you and I have talked about Embracer before. They were an investment group that bought a
Yeah,
bunch of
yeah.
smaller gaming companies. They're closing studios, selling assets, all this kind of stuff because funding fell through. They were kind of the bad guy. I mean, they're still the bad guy because they recently interviewed the CEO and they said, what do you think about the situation? Do you want to say anything after all these, you've shuttered studios and laid people off? And he said, I think it's just something people have to get over, or get through, or something. It was like deal with it. Basically, was his response. So the
I mean, business is business, right? And if the community isn't happy with it, right? Too bad. They made their business decision.
yeah,
The reality of it is, and I think about this when we talked about Embracer last time, I'm pretty sure we said the same thing, right? How's the community going to respond to that?
yeah, yeah.
And
Well, they were
I
the
think
butt
the
of
gaming community is kind of fed up with a lot of
yeah.
that behavior as a
Hmm.
whole, which is why, I'm sure you're about to say, Larian called them out in one of the last gaming awards that they went to,
Yeah.
like making jokes about the things that the CEO of Embracer had said.
Yeah, they
Um,
became a big butt of jokes at the Dice Awards, which were developer awards that they give to other developers. And Greg Miller
mhm.
hosted it. I'm a big fan of Kind of Funny. He's one of the founders of Kind of Funny. He hosted it and spoke, and he said the two worst things you can hear as a game developer are, we can't find the fun in this, and oh crap, Embracer's here. It's like the two really took a shot at him. But Warner Brothers Discovery is becoming like a new villain because Hogwarts Legacy in 2023, you and I talked about it on the pod several episodes ago. It has since blown up. It outsold Call of Duty. No matter what we think about the game, the sales speak for themselves. It was a single player, you get to be in
Yeah,
Hogwarts, right? And the
right.
the head of their, I want to see right here if they got his name. JB Perrette. He was speaking at a Morgan Stanley event, and he basically said that they want to, they were discussing company plans, which includes a pivot to free to play and live service games. Uh,
But before I go too far, what is a live service game?
Oh, I'm glad you
I'm
asked,
not
Avin.
nerdy enough to know that.
A live service game is Destiny. So you're playing the base
Okay.
game, and every quarter or whatever, they come up with a massive update that you log back into and say, "What do I want to do?" Fortnite is a live service game. Hey, we got a new season out. Come by the Battle Pass and check out what we got going. Which, by the way, Fortnite got me because it's all about Greek gods and goddesses, and you can unlock them. And I was like, "Dang it, I'm back in." I don't. I only play Fortnite like once a year, and I was like, "Well, I guess this is my. I'm clocking in
Okay.
March." So that's a live
So
service game.
Fortnite, Destiny, Division,
Yeah, live service.
any game where you're buying like a season pass or that kind
Right.
of thing.
And there's like content updates that you have to buy, whatever. You know, Hogwarts Legacy may have like a DLC drop of like, hey, go see East Campus. I don't know. I don't know what it would be. Or
I
like,
mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Hogwarts Legacy does something like that,
yeah,
right? Like,
there's a lot in that
Warner
world.
Brothers
Or like,
has a giant IP that they can mine out of, right? They've already paid for it, and it
yeah,
was like I think you and I talked about it last year when the results came out, or maybe it was towards the end of last year. Like what a big deal it was that Hogwarts Legacy had beaten
Call of Duty.
uh, Call of Duty, like for the first time in
12,
10
20,
years,
yeah, 12 years or something.
12 years.
The,
Yeah. Call of Duty
God.
was not the number one selling game, which
So yeah, it says right here
I get, but
from Yahoo, Hogwarts Legacy beat Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 to be the best-selling US PS5 game on the PS storefront of 2023. And then I think it goes on to say like it was like the first time. It was the news comes just days after it was revealed that Hogwarts Legacy was the first non Call of Duty or Rockstar developed. So Rockstar does Grand Theft Auto. So they're like, $1 billion property. Rockstar developed title to top the US sales chart since 2008. So they beat Call of Duty since
16 years.
Yeah. So just massive.
Well,
Just
no, 2023. So, but 15. Like that's insane,
yeah.
right? And so it's it's super interesting to me when you sent this article over. I was reading through this and I was like, man, like why on earth would you abandon that? And then I had the pause and the realization of like
It's a
you
licensed
had
game,
mentioned
right?
on the call, and it made well. There's license, so there's probably that licensing is probably on a per game sold plus
Yeah,
a
yeah.
flat
Well,
fee,
there was probably like a
which is
bait.
probably fat.
There was probably a base fee, and then like if it
Yep.
sells past this, then I get this much more. And
Or we get blank per unit. Like either way, they're going to make their money because they
yeah,
want to. Like even if the game flops, they still want to get their money.
I
So
get
they
it.
probably have here's a flat fee
I get $1 per
plus
copy
a per
sold or
unit,
whatever. Yeah, like
right?
which would be
And so
crazy.
I was thinking about it, and you had said like, yeah, they're trying to sell it to investors, right? Like these tentpole games, these AAA games are so expensive and take years to develop. And
Yeah.
you brought up like maybe they want more consistent and more steady revenue, and that's what they're looking at because that's what Wall Street wants. And I was thinking about it. I was like, yeah, because they're going up to bat, swinging for the fences every single time.
Yeah.
And obviously, this isn't Moneyball, where swinging for the fences every time actually pays off.
Mhm.
Like they need base hits.
It's yeah, I mean it's hard. I mean, there's smaller developers. I'm playing a game now from a smaller developer, and they actually have a pretty good release slate, and their games have done pretty well. But there's very few of those that can be like, hey, we have teams in two different countries, literally. We're making enough. I've actually the game I'm playing now is a AA studio, and I've actually looked online. I might just email them and be like, do you guys have any sales data? Because there is a little buzz for this game online. There's a the one I'm playing is like a third person action game kind of, but they come out with like the Snow Runner and Mud Runner games. So it's like you're in a truck in the snow, you have to deliver stuff to this point, and they'll kind of gamify it. They have a Mud Runner one coming out where it's like a science game where you have a winch and you have to whatever. It's like all these weird diverse titles, but they're like double A. But they're making money. But like it seems like Warner Brothers and these other big companies are like, we're taking big bets. We want big returns. If you're not doing that, we're that's why the whole live service campaign.
And the reality of it is they probably are making a ton with Hogwarts, but then the flip the script, right? The same article you sent me talked about the Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League game and how
They
that did
mentioned it.
not do very well.
He mentioned it
Well,
at the
yeah,
morning.
they
Yeah.
mentioned it.
He's like, by the way,
But
Hogwarts Legacy makes you look good. Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League makes you look bad. Like it was.
but you know, it it proves the point, right? Like they spent years and millions of dollars developing these games,
Right.
and one pays off and one doesn't, right? Like it's a complete gamble, and you put it together and you have this amazing amount of talent. These people put their blood, sweat, and tears into it, and
Yeah.
then the fans don't resonate with it. And so live service games, free to play games with microtransactions, like there's a reason that companies are pivoting that way.
Yeah.
And it's profit based, and fans may not like it, but it's because fans are fickle. And
Well,
obviously you're spending money on PUBG and Fortnite and Destiny 2, and like people are spending money on those games, and so if they can continue to run that IP,
yeah. Yeah.
continue to make predictable money, if you get big enough, then you can fund your other projects.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think
You can swing for the fences occasionally.
Well, I don't know if you know who Pirate Software is. He's like a really well-known YouTuber. He used to work at Blizzard, and he's making a game right now, and he live streams every day and talks about how the games. I actually want to try his game out. I think it's called Heartbound. It's on Steam. You can like wishlist it, but he's on there talking all the time about, financials and what it was like to work at Blizzard. And he worked at Blizzard. His dad worked at Blizzard too, and he said, "I worked overtime for 2 years on StarCraft 2, Wings of Liberty." He said, "Do you know that the first Sparkle Pony horse microtransaction you can buy on World of Warcraft, it made more money than StarCraft 2 Wings of Liberty?" And he said, so you can make fun of microtransactions all you want.
What?
Yeah, he said, you can make fun of microtransactions all you want, but the reason why these companies do them is because they can spend 2 years just in overtime, not even full development on a game, and they can release a microtransaction of a horse and it sells like gangbusters. And it's like,
Right.
look, I don't know anything about game development, but making a game with the full team overtime for 2 years, it couldn't have taken that much time to make the Sparkle Pony look good. I've seen what they look like when I played World of Warcraft. They look good, but that was a smaller team doing that. Going, could you imagine too, like having lunch in the cafeteria when you guys are like, "Hey man, you're kicking our butt, and you just made a horse."
Could you imagine being the guy who had that idea, who walks into the break room afterwards, like, I just made the company so much
Yeah, I know.
money.
And there,
You suck. You suck.
yeah.
You suck.
Part of it though is
Oh,
like,
wait.
but like
I'm
you
not
were,
getting a bonus on
but
that.
like you just mentioned, part of it is that guy walks in the cafeteria and goes, pats himself in the back. Everybody probably gives him crap, but he says, "Listen, guys, we did that so you guys can keep working on StarCraft 2 Wings of Liberty. Like we just made all that money so you guys can just keep going. So yeah, the Sparkle Host, which reminds me, I should wish list that guy's game. He's very motivational. He's really positive. He even says he makes Pirate Software. He makes enough money that he goes, "I'm comfortable. I don't need any more money." So he goes, "But I love ferrets and I do like ferret rescue." And so I set up a camera in my ferret terrarium, I guess what it would be called. So you can there's like a live ferret cam, and he made it its own YouTube channel. So he goes, "If you want to but I've never seen a developer go, 'I'm fine. Like this, we're making money on the game. I have a team and we're good.'" Like you're like, "Wow, that's crazy." Usually it's like everything's on fire and you're always out of money and you're stressed out and working, 14 hours a day. So the other thing I wanted to mention, again, Warner Brothers being the villain in all this, was the fact that I just sent you Friday. They've just decided to delist a bunch of Adult Swim games on Steam. It looks like the number is 25 from what I could see from the article. And developers are just like, they said, "We just got an email that said your game's going to be delisted." So, like, what are we going to do? And that's Warner Brothers.
No background or explanation?
So, some of the affected developers wrote that they will republish their games on Steam, but the titles will lose their community pages, Steam achievements, forums, screenshots, and other content. This could all be prevented if Warner Brothers transferred publishing permission to developers, but developers say the company is refusing to do so, citing a lack of resources. And according to one developer, "I sent the Steam transfer link, explained that it takes 3 clicks, and they still refused, claiming it would only be fair to transfer no one's games since they can't do all of them." So the developer's like, "Here's a step to relink the game," and they're like, "No." basically. So that's what they're doing. So I don't know if it's going to be Embracer is going to be the worst company at the end of 2024, or it's going to be Warner Brothers Discovery for just like, you know. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say I've seen these Adult Swim games. I will say when I've seen Adult Swim games in the past, they're always very quirky and different. It seems like when I've seen showcases with Adult Swim games, they're always like looking for things that are just odd. Like one of them was a pool game, but instead of a pool table, you're playing on like planets and stuff like that. And the pool balls had like a Rick and Morty art style, and they talked to one another. And the cue ball would talk crap when he ran into the other balls. And I was like, this game looks crazy. Go, but that's the kind of stuff you'd see in Adult Swim, and that kind of stuff's just being delisted. So, you know,
You know, you go back to the mobile gaming world when it really started taking off, and you had kind of the lower level, super simple games, but still made a ton of money kind of thing going on, right? Like, hey, let's just throw everything at the wall and see what sticks because we're making these so fast and so cheap.
It doesn't matter. It's 3 months, whatever it is, 6 months,
right?
You know, it's out.
Here's Flappy Bird.
Yeah, yeah. And that guy took his own game off because he said it was too addicting for people. You remember that whole story where he made Flappy Bird?
Was it too addicting? I thought he was just too stressed out because everyone realized how wealthy he was.
That too, and he said it was too addicting, and I think there was maybe some litigation at the end of that where he's like, "Well, I've made my money. I could take it down now and not get sued," you know. Or and the other stuff was probably too, where he's like, "Man, people are spending a lot of time on this really simple game. I don't understand why people are doing that." And then he's like looking at his bank account, going, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, he's like, should I take my money? It's like what is that? The Deal No Deal of like, do you want to keep the money you have or go for the other briefcase? And he was like, I think I'll keep the money that I have and go home. And like,
I don't remember what the numbers were, but it was obscene.
It was,
and
yeah.
And he lived in I believe a southeastern Asian country where the exchange rate was fantastic, and like it was an absurd amount of money in a very short period of time.
I just got it. I mean, you know, he did what he's, you know, the recent news that came out was Nintendo just shut down an emulator because they were emulating new Switch. And everybody was like, well, you know, emulation's legal. And then you start looking at that company, Yuzu or whatever, and they had a Patreon. And it was like, oh, see, you can't charge. That's the thing, is you can't. And Nintendo was like, hey, you're able to emulate like Tears of the Kingdom a month after it comes out. Like, how are you guys able to do that? They're not even a month. Like the day it was released, you can emulate it. And they're like, I think there's some shenanigans going on there. You know, it's like there's some piracy.
Yeah,
so
that's sus. Look, I'm all for protecting rights, particularly when it's that fast, right? When it's old IP, right? Like you're talking about emulating NES games.
Yeah.
Sega games, right? Like,
well, I think what I've heard, like,
really?
I don't know about copyright.
This is a fandom.
Yeah, like I don't know about like the rules, the DMCA and all that, but what I've heard kind of loosely is as long as you're not charging for it, there's a community, right? Of like, hey, take these games, and it's a preservation too. Do I remember most games on the NES? No, but when I see them, I'm like, oh, I remember that game. Yeah, I'll play for 5 minutes to just, you know, relive in nostalgia, but nobody's charging, right? They're just like, hey, this is a fan thing. Try it out. Let me know if it works. If it doesn't, you know, if the controls work and everything, and have a good day. The moment you put a Patreon, apparently they're making, I heard like $30,000 a month on their Patreon. So I'm sure Nintendo saw that and was like, hey man, you guys, you can't do that. Like you can't, that's not something you can do.
That's a lot for a little Patreon, but I would really wonder what their source is for being able to emulate the games so fast afterwards.
Yeah, I think that was Nintendo's thing, and I think what I heard is why they settled is they didn't want Discovery, because then then Nintendo gets to go through all their stuff and go, oh, so there is piracy, you know, or there is something nefarious on the back end. So
you had someone on the inside leaking you this stuff.
Yeah, we're gonna go find that.
Most likely.
Yeah, we're gonna go after that person. Instead, it was like, hey, we'll just pay you, man. We'll just pay you, and we'll just shutter everything and all that, you know. So, I mean, back to the situation with gaming. I mean, that's bad too. But like, it is harder and harder to like play games now when you think like, well, is this whole team like I had a really good time with X game or Y game? Is this team gonna be shuttered or closed? And like, I can't imagine going into the game development space now reading all this going, I have a degree in 3D animation or environmental art. I don't want to be a gamer. I'm going to go work in IT or finance or, like, why would I want to do that to myself? Like there's no,
Right.
I got this education. Like there's no point. Like I totally get that. That's insane to me that, you know, so yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answer. I don't know. I mean, and I don't think this is the end of it either. It's only the beginning of 2024, and we've already surpassed the amount of layoffs that took place all in 2023. And it's just going to be,
That's not what the article said, but we're way close. It was 10,000 last year in gaming,
and we're like at
and we're at
eight.
8,000
Yeah.
already.
So we're close. We're close. And it's only
We're really
March.
close.
And it's March.
I think it was noteworthy reading about EA's decision. They're laying off 5% of the company, about 670. But the article actually brought up that in EA's case, most of those are going to be support staff. Not good. No one wants to get it. But they brought up that it's EA's intention to keep as many of their developers and designers as possible, moving them on to other projects,
Yeah.
as opposed to laying them off. Which there is some silver lining in that, at least.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, at least they did that. And then, and in some companies, not all, some of them have been good with severance. I think Riot laid some people off and they said, we're giving you X amount of months of severance and you'll have health coverage for whatever many months. Some companies, the Microsoft one really bothered me in the 1900, because if you read Phil Spencer's statement, he said we will follow severance packages in accordance with local laws. So, in my opinion, that means we're going to do the least amount we have to do, because that would be the time in the statement where you say we're going to give everybody 2 months of severance, and and
If I remember that correctly, though, like it was like globally that they were
no, yeah,
laying people off.
but I'm saying,
And
like,
so I would wonder if, like, in the United States, like, hey, we're going to give you 2 months of severance. Like, there are no legal requirements for
yeah, no,
severance in the
I've heard
US.
that,
So
yeah,
anything is better than nothing, right? But it might be in London, like if you're laying off for profit reasons, you have to pay 90 days.
yeah,
And it might be
I've
in Hong Kong that
yeah,
that's the case. And I don't know. So I wouldn't read into that too nefariously, but I mean, it was still a profit decision, right?
yeah, yeah. Also, just as a side note, since we do the degree for politics, and I'm the liberal hippie, it was reported as
Mm.
part of these EA layoffs that they did buy back a bunch of their stock, so their stock option could go up. And there's been some numbers. I wasn't able to verify it, but I've heard some reputable people that the amount that they bought back could have kept those people employed for years. Now, I don't know. I'm not saying the people that reported that are lying, but when I tried to look for that information, I couldn't find it. But the news sources that I was listening to, they're way more plugged in than me, who just uses Google, like they have sources and things. So, me being a liberal hippie and just pointing out, like, hey, maybe don't buy back all your stock options and enrich the shareholders when you're laying off 600 and some odd people. And then, for a couple of years, it just seems kind of in bad taste. Just going to say that.
I mean, you don't have to be a liberal hippie to still, want workers to be taken care of,
Yeah.
right? I think what you're seeing with a lot of the pro-Trump movement is Trump really resonating with the heart of conservative workforces that feel like they're being ignored and being shoved aside for profits and big corporations too. And so
Yeah.
that populist kind of movement, which is kind of humorous because Trump labels himself Republican, but so often shows that he's not
Well, I mean,
anything of what we used to think of as a Republican.
without turning this into a bonus episode of Degree for Politics on
Well, yeah.
labor unions, Sean Fain, the head of the UAW, Biden came to the picket line, and Sean Fain is backing Biden. And then somebody asked him why not back Trump, and he just did a laundry list of things that Trump has done against the unions. He's moved jobs. He, wasn't whatever. We do have to talk about unions on that show eventually, I think. But
It's get another friend on that one though.
yeah, I have a friend that was in a union, and I want to hear him speak a little bit more, because he would go into depth when I'd ask him, because I had some kind of job, or I could have been union, and I was asking him questions. He was very specific about I'm in a different union, but here's the steps that you go through. And I was like, oh, I don't even know about those steps.
Mhm.
I don't know. I think in kind of to wrap this up, it just does make me a little bit depressed every time I read about uh, good news. Like Microsoft Wednesday had a developer showcase, a partner or whatever, and they showed off 14 games, and they looked really
Oh,
good.
cool.
They all the games looked interesting. They're all like smaller indie games, kind of. I think there was a couple big ones, but part of me thought, hmm, like if this game doesn't hit or isn't what you deem as profitable, are you just going to be like, well, this studio is shuttered? I guess with Game Pass, games in a way are subsidized, where it's like, well, this game did really well, this game didn't do as well, but with Game Pass, we're getting X amount of dollars coming in, so it doesn't matter either way as long as we hit this whatever strata of money. So we're okay with that. So maybe it'll be fine. I definitely want to check out those games. I think the biggest one I saw was I don't know. There was a lot. There was 14 games. They looked really good. So I might have to check those out. It seems like demos are becoming a thing again. A lot of developers are now saying,
Hmm.
"Hey, we got a demo of our game," and you're like, "That is excellent." They redid the old NES Contra, and they had a demo of it up on Xbox, and I played that, and Carla and I played it.
Oh,
the
cool.
The music was the same. The art was a little different, but you get
Hmm.
power ups now. You get like movement power ups, and the guy who does the voice for Wolverine in the old X-Men cartoon. He does the voice for one of the guys for Contra.
Hmm.
You hear his voice and you're like, that's Wolverine. Like you just hear his like gruff voice, you're like, it's Wolverine. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you're obviously looking at this from way on the outside, but it does kind of get
Hmm.
depressing to see any industry like this shrink, like again, if all these companies are laying people off, where are the people that are being laid off going to go, right? Like where they're, it's like, no, man, we just laid off 900 people. You can't
There's
find a
just
job here.
when any industry is broadly laying off, right? Like where are they going to be absorbed?
Yeah.
Because when the whole industry is going crazy, laying people off, even people that are like growing, hey, cool, we can scoop up talent. Like there's only so many of those jobs because
Yeah.
the industry wide is being hurt. And it doesn't matter what that industry is, right?
Yeah. I mean, I heard from an indie developer, Mike Bithell, he's done a lot of games. And he said, talking to his indie friends, other developers and heads of studio, he's like, well, indie space is obviously different. We don't lay people off. We usually just, he goes, I hate to say this, but the studio will just close. If it's
Mm.
smaller scope, we can't get any money to do stuff. And he goes, I have been at DICE, a lot of people get together and talk about development. He said, when I was at DICE a few weeks ago and people were talking, it was more like, I have X amount of dollars to X amount of months for payroll and everything, and then we have to
Yep.
find funding for what we're working on or our next project. Otherwise, we're done. And it's like,
Mm.
man, that sucks. So, really sucks. I will say, Arrowhead Studio, which is an independent studio, came out with Helldivers, which is basically, I don't know if you've seen anything about Helldivers. It's basically just Starship Troopers, the game, and it has blown the roof off of all expectations. It's crossplay with
Yeah, I've been I've been seeing a lot of headlines about it. I haven't read anything.
it's crossplay between PC and PS5, so you can get on and play together, which is great. And I played it for like an evening, and it's chaotic and great. And apparently the developer had to like uncap they have to get new servers because it's like constantly the servers are breaking, and
Right.
they had to cap them at 200,000 and then 300,000 and then 400,000. Peak occurrence right now is like 500,000 people are playing that game. So
Wow.
that's just an insane amount of people. Like I can look at it right now because I was looking at this morning. I just for sure. Helldivers right now is number 3 on most played. It is got 346,000 people playing right now. Its most 24-hour peak was 437,000. I lied. It wasn't 500,000. It was only 458,709. But still, that's everybody logging in. And they've actually reported that game has a game master. So, you're a hell diver. Think of Starship Troopers. You see a battle map of where the either arachnids are, the bugs from Starship Troopers, or they're basically robots from Terminator. They look like Terminators.
Hmm.
And the game master decides where the bugs are going to focus on or where the robots are going to focus on, and players can drop on those planets and try to affect it. In fact, they just announced mechs were going to be in the game, but the planet that the mechs were on were taken over by the robots. And so
Oh.
the players needed to answer the call, defeat the robots, and then they could have wound the factories up And then within 24 hours, they said, hey, and I don't think this was no joke. They said we had a concurrent 100,000 people landed on the planet and they defeated the robots, and now you can unlock mechs in the game. So it's stuff like that where you're like, that's pretty awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, and they have a game developer. Like I said, they have a guy. They call him a dungeon master. His name is Joel, and I've seen several Joel jokes. Somebody I follow on Twitter was playing, and it was like when mechs were announced. It said mechs are coming soon, and she said, "Soon, Joel is kicking our ass out there. Give us the mechs now." And I thought that was really good. Like, so Joel is literally just sitting in front of a big monitor, going, "All right, we're gonna move the bugs over here, and we're gonna move the terminids over here, and we're gonna push this way." And you get a tally when you finish a mission, how you've helped the planet be, like 100% liberated for democracy. So, by shooting bugs and dropping orbital strikes.
They're not bugs, Joe.
They're fat.
Very reason.
They're
They intentionally didn't pay for that IP.
What I think it is you look at them and and I know, like, listen, Starship Troopers was a book in the 50s or 60s. It was the movie in the 90s. I'm sure somebody owns the rights to a bug somewhere, but when you look at him, it's like, yeah, okay, we know what you're doing here. Like, I don't think anybody's going to come after you, but yeah, anyway, there is wins. Arrowhead got a massive win with that. They worked on this game for 9 years because they came out with the original one 9 years ago. And to just sit quietly and work for 9 years and find out that your game has, 500,000 people playing right now, it's got to feel really good, And the game,
there's some cheers in the office when these things are happening, right? When they pass each threshold, people are like, "Woo!" Someone comes out and lets everyone know, like, "Hey, we just crossed 200,000, 300,000."
Oh, yeah.
People are going nuts.
Yeah, and also, this game costs $40. So, it's like crap. That's why I was like, I gotta play this. I gotta try it. So it's on Steam. So
is it a purchase plus a subscription to pay for the servers?
No, it's only $40 flat, but they have like a battle pass. But all the battle pass I've seen so far is cosmetic. Do you want your soldier to have a cape? Do you want his gun to be blue? Nah, that's what it is. None of it is.
Okay.
I went in with level 1 weapon, and friendly fire is always on, just to let you know if you're going to play the game. But so yeah, and there's a little indicator at the bottom when your limb gets blown off. It'll turn red and it'll say like right arm, and you're like, oh, my right arm's missing. Great, it's not good at all. So anyway, I wanted to end it on an up note. It isn't all doom and gloom, I guess, even though sometimes it is depressing to read the news. But like, hey man, Helldivers 2 exists, and like you mention all the time, Baldur's Gate 3 exists. These are independent studios just knocking it out of the park. And Larian, the head of Larian said flat out, well, we're not a publicly traded company, so we don't have to worry about these things. We have internal metrics for how, we're selling data. And then after that, it's, profit basically. So good for him. So anything to add before we leave, Avin?
No, I think we covered everything pretty well, actually.
Yeah.
A longer than usual Gaming with Grief podcast, but good conversation.
Yeah, got a guest. I can't ramble for 37 minutes on my own. I could. Anyway, well, thanks for joining me, Avin. I might have to do, again, I've said it many times, we have to do it some good, like a good news Gaming with Grief or something, maybe.
I mean, the whole thing is gaming with grief.
Yeah.
So when we're discussing things, we're talking about things that bring grief.
Yeah. And again,
it's not gaming with joy.
Yeah, no, that's the spin-off podcast. I'll just say though, like my heart does go out to people that are affected. I hope everybody lands on their feet, and I hope this doesn't ruin everybody's enthusiasm for games. It's probably dire right now, but because those studios that laid people off, I enjoy games from all of those studios. So I don't know. You did good work, is all I'm saying. Don't think that you didn't do a good thing. So I guess that's it this week. Avin, thanks for joining me as ever, and I will talk to everybody next week.